Hello, everyone. My name is Derek Staines, and today I'm going to be giving you guys a short little presentation on concussions and the severity of concussions. Now, before I do just jump into this presentation, I do want to say that this is not meant to scare you guys. It's not meant to deter you from playing a sport, but it's simply just to inform you that concussions are serious and they can cause permanent damage to the brain. So, just a little bit about myself personally. I go to Frostburg State University. I am in my last semester where I will be getting a degree in criminal justice. I played soccer for 3 years where I was named captain after the first semester of being here. And then I ultimately made the decision to stop playing due to concussions. I suffered from severe headaches and a little bit of memory loss. So after my decision to stop playing, I took on many leadership roles on campus, which kind of got me in this spot I'm in. But a huge part of that goes to Derek Thomson Sheely. Um, he was a part of the men's football team here at Frostburg, and in 2011, he suffered from many hits to the head, and he continued to play. And later that day, he unfortunately collapsed and died from the head injuries that he sustained from that practice. However, the Sheely family didn't want to battle in court, but they wanted to see some change in the NCAA standards. So they filed a lawsuit, and they won that lawsuit. And the money from that lawsuit created opportunities for students like myself to receive a full scholarship for 1 year, and then in return, we work to increase awareness of concussions and brain traumatic injuries at the youth level. So I'm hoping by the end of this presentation, you all will gain some form of knowledge about concussions and brain traumatic injuries, but also see that concussions aren't a thing to play with, as you can see from this incident. So concussion is a type of brain traumatic injury that's caused by some form of hit to the head or to the body that causes the head and brain to move rapidly back and forth. So with that said, a concussion doesn't have to be a direct result of a blow to the head. It can happen simply from falling, getting hit to the body, which causes your brain to move rapidly back and forth. And kind of add on to that, concussions don't always have to happen with sports. They can simply happen at your job, at your home, just hitting your head on, a cabinet or, something crazy like that. So it doesn't always happen in sports, and it can happen at any time and anywhere. So I won't bore you guys to death and read all the signs and symptoms, but some key symptoms you should look out for are headache, balancing problems, and blurred vision, and memory problems and slurred speech. So some signs you should also look out for are loss of consciousness, unequal pupils, and confusion. So with that said, not everyone's going to have the same symptoms. It can be completely different for everyone. Some people may not even get concussion symptoms until days down the road, and that's kind of how it was for me. I was never diagnosed with a concussion until about 3 days later. And some symptoms that occurred for me were headache, memory loss, sensitivity to light, and having a hard time concentrating. But for you guys, it can be completely different. You can have one symptom, or you can have all the symptoms listed here. So what should you do when you're having concussion symptoms? If you're having any symptoms, first and foremost, you should never hide it. Secondly, you should report it to your coach, your parent, or an athletic trainer. And then lastly, you should take time for your brain to recover. And that is absolutely the most vital step here. But kind of to go off of not hiding concussions, we'll talk about some reasons that athletes do in fact hide concussions. So these are just going to be some reasons that I found during my research that athletes hide concussions. Obviously, it's not every reason. These are just some of the main reasons that I found. So one of the reasons is that athletes don't know the severity of a concussion. And that is personally what it was for me. I never knew what a concussion was. I never knew the severity of a concussion until I got to college. And I heard about the Derek Sheely incident. And, when I got here, the athletic trainers they were on it. As soon as I took a hit and I looked a little dazed, they're like, okay, do you have a headache? All this. They would do a sideline test with me. But yeah, I just never knew what a concussion was until I got to college. And I took many hits in high school where, I probably was concussed, and it just never fazed me because I didn't know what it was. And another reason I have is playing's fun. You don't want to stop having fun. And then these last two kind of go together. So you don't want to lose playing time and you don't want to let your team down. And that was probably the biggest factor for me. And I have to admit that I am guilty of hiding a concussion. I went a few days trying to avoid any more head injuries. And, after my symptoms had worsened, I pulled my coach to the side. I told him what was going on and that I really didn't want to lose my playing time and I didn't want to let the team down. So I asked him for advice. And thankfully, he took me to the athletic trainer. And from there, we discussed my symptoms and other concussion protocols, in which we'll discuss a little further in this presentation. So to kind of elaborate on not having a concussion, untreated concussions can have many long-term effects. These aren't all the long-term effects, but these are just some of the main ones. There's death, headaches, memory problems, vertigo, depression, different fears of things, and anxiety. But I also want to mention a term called second impact injury or second impact syndrome. And it can occur after a concussion if the first concussion isn't dealt with appropriately. And so we'll use an analogy to kind of explain this instead of giving you like a full-on scientific definition. So it's like taking every day, right? You have a stack of papers that your brain has to process. Now, let's say you get a concussion. It adds about 10 times more stacks of those paper for your brain to process, and it slows it down. And as you keep getting hit, it's just going to keep piling papers on top of what your brain already has to process. And then once there's too many stacks, there's just not enough energy for the brain to process it. And it can eventually lead to death or some form of, long-term injury, as we've gone over here. So it's important that, you get your concussion dealt with properly, or else you could suffer from many of these long-term effects. So to hit on the second point of reporting it to your parent, coach, or athletic trainer, coaches should remove you from the game and keep you out. They are not allowed to clear you to play. Only your primary care physician or specialist / trainer are the people who can clear you to play. And as a parent, your parent should take you to receive medical attention right away, and the specialist will give you their steps to return to play. Everybody's going to be a little different. Something that we use at Frostburg is the 6-day return to play process, and this occurs right after you're symptom free. You're going to go back to regular activities. You're going to go back to school if you're not in school already and your concussion symptoms are severe. You're going to go back to doing, biking, walking, some light aerobic activities the next day. You're going to go to more moderate, and it's just going to keep building up till you get to competition, where you're full contact. You're going back to practice, and keep in mind that each day, if you are experiencing any concussion symptoms, this entire process will restart. So if you're experiencing concussion symptoms on day 3 where you're doing moderate activities, then you're going to wait until you're symptom free again, and we're going to start back over with regular activities. So if there is an athletic trainer at your game, they're going to evaluate you directly after the injury takes place. Now they're going to ask you a number of questions like what kind of symptoms you're having. They'll do a sideline card with you as well, where they ask you things that happened before the game and things that led up to where you are currently. So they'll ask you things like, do you know where you are, what team you're playing, what's the score of the game, and things like that. And they'll also ask you if you've ever had a concussion before. And it's important that you do answer this truthfully, because if you've already had a concussion, you are more susceptible to getting another concussion. And the last thing they may ask you is, did you have loss of consciousness when you took the hit? And if you did, it's kind of a sign right there that you are most likely concussed. But they'll also have you participate in a test, and it's called the Pearl test. And this is used to see how quickly your pupils dilate and retract. And, if you are experiencing unequal pupils, then it could be a sign of a brain bleed, which requires immediate attention. So to kind of hit on this last point, you need to take time for your brain to recover. And this is, like I said, the most vital key to, the concussion process. So first, you should complete the 6-day return to play process, or whatever your physician or specialist comes up with, you should stay off your phones while you're concussed and avoid activities that are physically demanding or involve intensive concentration, like playing Fortnite, Call of Duty, whatever you guys do nowadays. But it's important to kind of give your eyes some rest and not partake in that intensive concentration. But there is a common myth that it's not okay to lay down or go to sleep, but it's actually recommended by doctors that you do lay down in a dark room and you do get rest, because that is, like I said, the most vital part in this concussion process. But the last thing is temporary academic leave. And obviously, it's not something that you should, abuse. But athletic trainers, primary care physicians, and your specialists have the ability to excuse you from the classroom if they feel that your injury is going to affect your ability to be successful in the classroom. So I just want to hit you guys with 3 quick facts. There is no specific test to diagnose a concussion right away, which is why at Frostburg we use this thing called the baseline test. And this test consists of many memory tests, such as like shapes, numbers, and letters. And there's also a reaction test, and both of these are done on the computer. And then after you pass these tests, then you do a foam pad test where you stand on top of it and tally how many times you fall and you can't surpass a certain number. So you take this test at the beginning of your first year, and then say you are diagnosed with a concussion, you have to take the test again once you're asymptomatic and meet those same standards that you set when you originally took the test. Another fact is that 70% of athletes play with possible symptoms, while 40% of the time, the coach doesn't even know that the athlete's playing with these symptoms. And the last fact here is that girls soccer has the highest concussion rate. And this might come of a surprise because many people think that football and boys lacrosse have the highest number of concussions. And, that might be true in a sense. Football and boys lacrosse have the highest number of concussions. However, when we take a look at similar boys and girls sports, so if we take girls soccer and boys soccer, or boys lacrosse, girls have roughly twice the risk of concussions compared to boys, and that's simply because they are wired differently. They have a different chemical balance than men, and women have less developed neck muscles. So, with that said, strong neck muscles lead to less movement in the head and the brain when there is an impact. So our trainers here have kind of guided their workouts to focus on strengthening neck muscles, especially in those girls' teams. And one thing that I want to leave you guys with is that it's better to miss one game than your entire season. I do appreciate your guys' time for watching this. If you guys have any questions, please let your coach know, and I will get back to you guys as soon as possible.